All right, Yerosai, good morning. Good morning. Let's begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our TAMLUD TORAH sponsor for the month of Iyar, an anonymous sponsor, with Hakaras Hatov to Hashem, for all of the blessings He has bestowed upon us, for refuah Shleima for Devorah Leah bas Chaya Rivka. May we all be zoche Hashem to witness the imminent coming of mashiach in Rabbi Yameinu. Amen. Our week of learning sponsor Shmuel Robyn Korobkin, commemoration of the yahrzeit of Shmuel's father, Leonard Korobkin, Lipa ben Yechezkel HaKohen, Zichron Levrach, we obtain the merit of our TAMLUD Torah, and Hashem will have an aliyah and the family in Achama. With that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem, an incredible daf ahead of us, brand new parak ahead of us. Today's daf is Pei Gimel 83, and we are picking up Emirates Hashem on Pei Beis Amud Beis 82b, and we left off literally the first line. So we'll say, remember again, just to orient ourselves a little bit. So we had an interesting Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Reuven asks me to move his barrel. So I move the barrel or I should say, I'm watching Reuven's barrel, and I move it from point A to point B. In the course of moving it, the barrel breaks. So the Mishnah Paskin, that whether I'm a Shomer Sachar or a Shomer Chinam, halacha l'maisa, I am exempt. I go ahead and I swear that I was not a poshea. I swear that I was not a negligent. And halacha l'maisa, I am exempt from any further payment. That was the Mishnah. Now remember again, the Gemara expanded on this a little bit and essentially highlighted three different shitos. Rabbi Meir is the Tanakama. So Rabbi Meir holds that halacha l'maisa, whether you're a shomer sachar, whether you're a shomer chinam, swear that you were not negligent and you are pater. Rabbi Yehuda said not true. Shomer chinam will be pater. Shomer sachar will absolutely be chayiv. Okay? And then there was Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, look, I know that the halacha follows Rabbi Meir, that whether you're a shomer sachar, whether you're a shomer chinam, you are going to take an oath that you are not negligent and you'll be pater, but I don't know why that is. Okay, so those are our three shitas. So it says the Mimra, there's some Rabbi Meir niska la poshehu. So we'll say it must be that Rabbi Meir holds that tripping is not considered to be negligence. That's the idea over here, because we'll say the assumption over here is how is the barrel breaking? When I'm transporting it from point A to point B, how is it that the barrel is breaking? So Pashtos, I'm tripping, I'm falling, and the barrel is breaking. Now Rabbi Meir, remember again, Rabbi Meir is the one who holds that Allah Chalamaysa, whether you're a shomer sachar, whether you're a shomer chinam, you take an oath that you are not negligent and you are pater. So it must be that Rabbi Meir holds that tripping is not negligence. The Gemara says, one second, a lot of time we learn, so we'll say, Nishbara kadavalo silgo, if I'm carrying a barrel and it broke and I did not remove the pieces, or naflo gimalo velo ha'amida, or for that matter again, my camel fell down and I did not help it back up. As a result, somebody else tripped over the shards or someone else tripped over the camel. Rabbi Meir mechayiv be'azekin. Rabbi Meir says, I'm chayiv. I am chayiv for any subsequent damages that have occurred. The Chacham say, Pater medine Adam, the chayiv b'dine Shleima. The Chacham say, I am Pater b'dine Adam. Right? So again, in a human court, I'll be Pater, but ultimately, again, I am chayiv b'dine Shamayim. The Kaimalon, and both say, we said, what's the source of this machlokas? What are they arguing about? They're arguing about, is tripping considered to be a form of negligence? So I'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that according to Rabbi Meir clearly holds that halacha l'maisa, tripping is negligence. Right? Because also remember again, he says that if I trip, my barrel breaks and I don't clean up the shards, I'm chayiv. My camel trips and falls and I don't remove the camel, I'm chayiv. So you see from here that according to Rabbi Meir, tripping is negligence. So how does this stem? How do you reconcile this with our Mishnah? To which the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Tavra, Misha Shanazu, Lo Shanazu. So Rabbi Elazar says the truth is they are irreconcilable, and it must be that whoever taught this halacha did not teach this halacha. In other words, it must just be simply two different authors and two different reflections of Rabbi Meir's view. So that's Rabbi Meir. So now again, leaving aside the brisa that we just quoted, we've got Rabbi Meir in our Mishnah, right? So Rabbi Meir's shita is pretty clear. Rabbi Meir's shita is that halacha l'maisa, whether you're a shomer sachar, whether you're a shomer chinam, if you go ahead and you're transporting the barrel, you trip, the barrel breaks, you take a shvur that you are not negligent and you are exempt. Okay, that's Rabbi Meir. Next, Vas Rabbi Huda Rabbi Huda comes along and says, shomer chinam yishava no se schar yishalim. Now Rabbi Yehuda comes along and he says like this, no, The halacha is like this. A shomer chinam swears that he is not negligent, and he will be exempt from any further payment. Now, we'll say now, again, Rabbi Shomer Sachar, on the other hand, will be chayiv to pay. No, say Sachar yishalim. Why? What's his logic? So Yehuda is very straightforward. Hai kidine v'hai kidine. Because we'll say it's perfectly in line with each of their respective. Sorry, too little sleep even for me last night. Their respective levels of liability. So remember again, because remember a shomer chinam is only chayiv for pshia. So therefore, as long as he swears that there was no negligence, then halacha l'maisa he is exempt from any further responsibility. A shomer sachar, remember we'll say a shomer sachar is chayiv even for gneva va'aveda. So because he's chayiv even for gneva va'aveda, so therefore again, tripping is still going to fall under the purview of his liability. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, shomer sachar is still going to be chayiv. So we'll say that's Rabbi Yehuda. It's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Elazar comes along and says, in Gemara Rabbi Meir, while it's true that our tradition teaches us that the halacha follows Rabbi Meir, umiu tamia ani im yecholin zeh v'zeh l'shava. Rabbi Elazar says, I just don't understand. Rabbi Elazar, I know that the halacha follows Rabbi Meir, but I just don't understand specifically why it is that a shomer sachar could swear and free himself from liability. Because bishlam a shomer chinam mishtabed lo pashaba, I understand why a shomer chinam could swear that he was not poshea, right, and therefore again exempt himself from liability. El shomer sachar amay mishtaba, but a shomer sachar, why does an oath that he wasn't negligent? Why does that free him from responsibility? Kilo pasha, even if he wasn't negligent, nami shalumi boy. Also remember again, a shomer sachar is going to be chayiv for gneva v'avida. He's chayiv even if the object was stolen or lost. So just because he wasn't poshea, just because he wasn't negligent, shouldn't free him from responsibility. So the Gemara says fine. So we'll say, so therefore again, so if we pause here for just a second, these are our three shitos, right? So again, I'm transporting a barrel, I'm watching a barrel from Ruvain, I'm transporting it from point A to point B. I will say, by the way, it doesn't even have to, I'm watching it for Ruvain, I'm transporting it from point A to point B, it breaks, right? So now, what's my level of liability? So first of all, we're establishing this as a case of where I'm tripping and it breaks. So therefore, the Gemara was assuming maybe it's niskal poshea. Maybe we're talking about is tripping considered to be negligence or not. So also we have three different shitos. Rabbi Meir, whether you're a shomer sachar, whether you're a shomer chinam, swear that you are not negligent and you are freed from responsibility. Rabbi Yehuda, absolutely not. Shomer chinam could swear and be exempt. Shomer sachar is going to be chayiv. Rabbi Eliezer, I agree with Rabbi Meir, I'm just not sure why this is. I understand why a shomer chinam. In other words, essentially we'll say, what Rabbi Yehuda is saying is, misvara, logically, I agree with Rabbi Yehuda. I agree with Rabbi Yehuda. Yet I know that on the books the halacha is like Rabbi Meir, but I don't understand why. So again, let's go back. The Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, "Hateinach." So afafilu shomer chinam nami. Now the truth is, in Rabbi Eliezer's view, I here conceptually, like Rabbi Yehuda, understands why a shomer chinam, right? The shomer chinam will take an oath that he wasn't negligent, and ultimately again he'll be freed from responsibility. But even in the case of a shomer chinam, Hatinach b'makom madron. I understand this in a case of where there's a reservoir, so let's say he's walking on air where there's a slope. See, where there's a slope, so that could be an ones, right? I'm transporting a barrel from point A to point B. It's a sloped area. It's understandable that I could come to go ahead and trip and fall. And that's even, Rashi says, that's karav la'ones. That even could resemble a situation of extenuating circumstances. Shelo b'makom madron mi matzim mishtaba d'lo pasha. But I will say again, if I'm just transporting the barrel right from point A to point B, and it's not a sloped area, it's just straight. So I'll say, so come on, keep it together. So why am I falling down? Why am I falling down? In other words, there it's much harder to make the argument that I'm not a poshea. Top of Pei Gimel, 83a. And I will say, even, this is actually very interesting, even in a situation where there is a little bit of a slope, which maybe that is a little bit more of a case of a ones. Hatenach hecha delekaraya. I should only be able to take an oath and exempt myself from liability when there are no witnesses. where there are no witnesses. Aval heichad di'ikaraya, but in a place where there could be witnesses. So the Gemara says, Neisei raya v'niftar, then it shouldn't be enough for me to take a shvuah and exempt myself from further liability. Rather, what should I have to do? I should have to bring witnesses. Ultimately, again, that I was not negligent. Tisanya, because we learned, Isi ben Yehuda Omer, we'll say Isi ben Yehuda, and we'll just remember this position because we're going to be referencing this statement of Isi ben Yehuda a number of times. Isi ben Yehuda Omer, Ein roeh shvuas Hashem tiyeh beineim. So the pasuk says, when there's ein roeh. Oh, well, again, it's a little bit of a juxtaposition of two different phrases. So, but the way the Gemara is darshaning it is ein roeh, when there is no one who could attest to the veracity of the claim, when there is no one who could give independent testimony about what happened, shvuas Hashem tiyeh bein shnehem. Then you employ a shvuah. And I was going to say, when is a shvuah used? A shvuah is used when you cannot go ahead and ascertain the truth through testimony. Ha yesh roeh, but if there could be testimony, if there could be witnesses, so the Gemara says, Yavi raya v'yipater. Ultimately, again, then bring a testimonial proof, and you'll be exempt from any further liability. So we'll say, so the Gemara saying is like this. So this is really very interesting. So just to pause here for just a second. So what we have over here is like this. Rabbi Eliezer is coming along and saying, I know that the halacha is like Rabbi Meir. I know that. And therefore, again, whether you're a shomer sachar, whether you're a shomer chinam, the halacha is take a shvuah and exempt yourself. Rabbi Eliezer says, I just don't understand it. I just don't understand it. In other words, shomer sachar, I for sure don't understand, because why would a shomer sachar is chayiv even if it's not negligence? He's chayiv for, let's say, for examples of gneva v'aveda. And I will say, gneva v'aveda means even common situations of liability he's chayiv for. So why should a shomer sachar be able to take an oath that he wasn't negligent and exempt himself? Furthermore, even a shomer chinam. So I will say, what the Gemara is pointing out to her is that a shomer chinam, there could be so many situations where, let's say again, shomer chinam slips on a non-sloped area. I don't know. That's a little bit more close. That's a little bit closer to negligence, right? It's a little bit closer to negligence. So why should he just be able to swear and exempt himself? Furthermore, an oath, I will say, is only a last resort. Let's say it's a place where there are people. So shouldn't we require the shomer chinam to bring witnesses to support his statement that he wasn't negligent? Why do we just rely on the shvuah? So Rabbi will say, watch this. So the Gemara will say, Pei Gimel Dalet 83a, 5 lines down from the top. Here it is. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan, shvuah zu takanas chachamim hi. We'll say, here it is. Underline this, right? The Gemara says, you're right. There's something different unfolding over here. This shvuah is a rabbinic enactment. What's rabbinic enactment? We'll say, Shim'iyah to Omer Kain, Ein lecha adam hamavir chaves lechaveira mimakom lemakom. We'll say, now watch this. This is very interesting. In general, we'll say, the halacha understood, if you make performing a favor for someone difficult, right? Or if performing a favor comes with regular liability, what's going to happen? No one's going to do it. So if I will say like this, Chazal understood, we have a vested interest in enabling people to do good things for each other. But in order to do that, you have to give them protection from liability. So what did Chazal say? Chazal said if you're moving something for someone, right? If you're moving something for someone at their request, right? So then again, the halacha has to cover you from liability. So therefore, the Gemara says, Shvuah zu takanas chacham. This shvuah is a takanas chacham. Rashi says over here, Lipa ba. So this shvuah is a takanas chachamim to exempt him from liability. Because if we don't have this shvuah, Shem iyata omer kain, ein lecha adam hamaver chaves lechaveira mimakom lemakom. No one is ever going to want to perform a favor and move their friend's object from one place to another. So in order to ensure that people feel legally comfortable performing just a simple favor of moving an object from one spot to another spot to their friend, Chazal said like this, you're covered. If something happens to the barrel, right, something happens to the object, all you need to do is swear that you weren't negligent. And as long as you swear that you weren't negligent, you're done. We don't delve further into this. Was it a slope? Was it not a slope? Are you a shomer chinam? Are you a shomer sachar? Can you bring witnesses? Can't bring witnesses? Simple. Now again, I will say, remember, we can't go so far to say, as you have no liability, right? Because that would then create a dangerous scenario on the flip side. Then that would open up the door to people being totally negligent and not having any level of responsibility. So create this middle ground. And what we essentially say is if you do the favor for someone and the object breaks, all you need to do is swear that you are not negligent and you're done. And you're done. And that way, again, we ensure that people do feel comfortable going ahead and. Now, we'll say, now, by the way, obviously, just to be clear, if I'm moving the barrel for Ruvain, right, and I break the barrel, obviously, Ruvain could also say what? What could Ruvain say? Right? I believe you. Right? Well, Ruvain can make a claim against me. No. So that will not work. Remember, that does not work. That's the whole chap over here. This protects me from a claim of negligence, right? Now, if again, Ruvain could bring witnesses that I was negligent. He can bring witnesses and then that becomes a legal case. But in a general scenario, if I'm performing a favor for someone, by the way, it's not just a favor, because remember, this is a case of shomer chinam or shomer sachar. The idea, I'm going to say over here is moving an object from one place to another is a common everyday activity of daily living. Everyday activity of daily living, right? It's an activity of daily living. If halacha l'maisa, there is no legal coverage, no one's going to want to do these things for each other. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, there's legal coverage. All I have to do is take a shvuah that I was not negligent and I'm freed from liability. What I was going to mention is, I want to say, obviously, these cases don't automatically trigger a shvuah, right? If Ruvain believes me, then obviously there's no shvuah. The shvuah only comes up in a scenario where Ruvain doesn't believe me, right? So Ruvain says, no, you were negligent. So assuming that Ruvain can't produce witnesses to that, it's just his word against mine, then Allah said, take the shvuah and I'm done. So the Gemara says as follows. By the way, what is the shvuah? Just what's the actual wording of the shvuah? So Amarava, shvuah shelo bekavana shavartiha. Right? I take a shvuah that I did not break it intentionally. That's it, right? I swear that I did not do this intentionally. And once I take that shvuah, I am freed from all liability. So we'll say so again. So this is now, we're reframing all of this. This is the position of Rabbi Meir. And now everything kind of drops into place. So now I understand why this is not a din of shomer chinam, it's not a din of shomer sachar. It's just the halacha that says when performing what we'll call just the normative activity, Chazal felt they had to give the shomer some level of protection so as to ensure that people would feel comfortable doing things for one another. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, the barrel breaks, I take the oath, I swear that I did not break it intentionally, and I'm done. Rabbi Yehuda comes along and says, Shomer chinam mishava no se schar kishalim. I will say, now Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with this ikra halacha. Rabbi Yehuda says, I agree with you by a shomer chinam. By a shomer chinam, an unpaid custodian, he takes this oath and he's good. But shomer sachar, a paid custodian should have to pay. Why? Hai kedine v'hai kedine. I will say, there are different halachas for a shomer chinam and a shomer sachar. Because a shomer sachar is paid, therefore he has heightened liability. So to say that he could just swear that he didn't break it intentionally, that's not enough. We'll say, remember again, even if a shomer sachar didn't break it intentionally, there could still be liability, right? Because remember again, a shomer sachar is chayiv even for gneva va'aveda. V'asar belazar l'meimar in Gemara Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Elazar comes along and says, yes, the halacha follows Rabbi Meir. The halacha follows Rabbi Meir. Mihu Tamia ini im yecholim zeh v'zeh lishava. So Rabbi Elazar comes along and says, I just don't understand the logic of this. That's why I don't understand the logic. Bishlam shomer chinam mishtava de lo pashava. So I understand that a shomer chinam could go ahead and halacha l'maisa swear that he was not a posheya, and as long as he swears that he wasn't negligent, he's free and clear. The Gemara says, however, shomer sachar ma mishtava. Ki lo pasha nami bay l'shilume. Because again, we're just repeating the same thing again. Because remember, shomer sachar, even if he wasn't posheya, he's still chayiv. Furthermore, vafilu shomer chinam nami ha tenach b'makom madron. Furthermore, even a shomer chinam, why should he be able to swear and free himself from liability? I understand if we're talking about a case where he's transporting the barrel along a slanted area, sloped area. As well say, if it's on a slope, as Rashi said before, maybe that's even karav la'ones. That's a bit of an extenuating circumstance. Shelo b'makom madron mimatzi mishtabah shelo pasha. So we'll say, but again, if he's just carrying it, just on like straight land, straight road, I don't understand. If he trips and falls, isn't that a little bit closer to Poshea? Furthermore, again, vafilu b'makom madron, even about in a slanted area, nami hatinach heichad delekaraya, aval heichad diikaraya, nesi raya v'yiftar. But halacha l'maisa, again, even if he's carrying it also in a slanted area, if there are witnesses, he should be obligated to go ahead and bring witnesses. So the point that Rabbi Lazar is making is, I know the halacha follows Rabbi Meir, I just don't understand why. Tisanya Isi ben Yehuda, Omer Isi ben Yehuda says, Ein roa shvuas Hashem tiyeh ben shnehem. So Isi ben Yehuda says, Hayesh roa yavi raya v'yipater. Isi ben Yehuda says, when do you use a shvuah? When you cannot corroborate the claim through testimony. But if the claim could be corroborated through testimony, then a shvuah should not be used. Okay, so therefore we'll say, so now I got it. Now it makes sense. Now it turns out that the shvuah of the Mishnah of Hama'avir Chavas Mimakom L'makom is a takana d'Rabbanan. It's a takana d'Rabbanan that you should just be able to examine. I will say, by the way, it also, just so you understand the logic is because b'pashtos, when you are watching something for someone, the need to move the item is such a common need that Chazal were concerned that if halacha l'maisa, you're going to have complete liability just for a common occurrence, then you're just not going to want to do this for someone else, whether you're a shomer chinam or a shomer sachar. Therefore, in order to ensure that people will feel comfortable doing things for other people, you have to afford them some level of protection. We'll say, we see other examples of this. For example, again, we'll actually see this in the Gemara later on, where halacha l'maisa, if you go ahead and you perform a service for someone, there is a certain level of, we'll call it protection, that you are afforded if you are performing a normal service, because if not, people aren't going to want to perform that service for one another. So the idea over here is moving the barrel from point A to point B is a common occurrence that would happen whenever you're watching something for someone. And therefore, if there's complete liability for that, people aren't going to want to do it. So therefore, Chazal said, if you're performing what we'll call a normal activity that occurs while watching something for someone, we're going to give you a basic level of legal protection, which is that if you swear that you were not negligent, you're freed from liability. Shomer chinam, shomer sachar, it simply doesn't matter. So therefore, we've got Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Eliezer essentially agreeing with this, although Rabbi Eliezer doesn't fully understand it, but he accepts it. And Rabbi Yehuda fundamentally disagreeing and hold that this takana only applies to a shomer chinam, doesn't apply to a shomer sachar. Good. Let's tell a story. The Gemara says as follows: Sahu Gavra, the Havakama Aver Chavdisa de Chamra, Beristika de Mechuza. There was a guy who was moving a barrel of wine for someone in the city square of Mechuza. The Tavra Beziza de Mechuza. And what happened? As he's carrying the barrel, there was like a protrusion from the wall. He hit the barrel against the protrusion, and the barrel broke. So they came before Rava. Again, what's talacha? Is he chayiv or not? Amrali Ristika de Mechuza shchichi ba inshi. Ristika de Mechuza is a very populated place. So therefore, again, you should have no problem finding witnesses. So he says to the shomer, listen, I'm not, again, you did this in a populated area, bring witnesses that you are not a posheya. So the Gemara says, so bring witnesses and you'll be pater. Rav Yosef Berei Kiman. So Rav Yosef, his son, said to him, Father, who are you passing like? Ki Isi. Are you passing like Isi ben Yehuda? Because you must remember again, what did Isi ben Yehuda say? Isi ben Yehuda said, Ein roa shvuas Hashem tiyeh ben shneim. Which means what? When do you use a shvuah? When you can't find witnesses. But if you could find witnesses, we don't rely on shvuah. Amarle in ki Isi, yes, I'm asking like Isi usir lan kavase, and that is how we hold. Okay, so the Gemara goes weiter. Hu gavra d'Amarle lechavre. So it says, so there was a guy who said to his friend, Zil Zabin Li Arba Mea Dani Chamra. Very interesting case. I say, so watch this. So I say to Ruvain, go ahead and buy me 400 barrels of wine. So I'm giving him the money. Buy me 400 barrels of wine. So the Gemara says, what happens? Azil Zabin Li. So Ruvain went and bought me the wine. L'sof Asal Kameh. Then Ruvain comes to me and he says like this: Amar Le Zavini Lecha Arba Mea Dani Chamra. You know, I did it. You gave me the money. I bought 400 barrels of wine. But Vitakifu Luhu. You're not going to believe this. They all turned sour. They turned to vinegar. So also coming to Rava. So they came before Rava for Psak Halacha. Amrlei, Arba Mea Dani Chamra Takifi, Kala Islay. I would say 400 barrels of wine turning sour, that's like a major event. That's a major event. So people are going to know about that. Kala Islay means it's going to be public knowledge. Kala Islay the Milsei, Zil Aisiraya, de Meikara Kibin Zabnislu, Chamra Ma'al Yahaba Veifter. So Rava said like this, Rava says to Ruvain, just go bring proof, go bring witnesses. In other words, now what do you have to bring witnesses to? You have to bring witnesses to the fact that when you bought the 400 barrels of wine, it was wine. That's all you need to bring testimony to. Bring testimony that you brought that the 400 barrels of wine were in fact wine when you bought them. They turned. In other words, you don't have to bring a raya that they subsequently turned sour, right? Because that we see in front of us right now. You just have to bring testimony that you in fact followed the instructions and you bought 400 barrels of wine. That's all. So the Rav Yosef breaks. Rav Yosef said to his father, Rava, Kiman, ki isi? Father, are you passing like Isi ben Yehuda? Because again, remember, so what does Isi ben Yehuda say? Isi ben Yehuda says the only time that you could pater yourself with a shvuah is when there's no witnesses. But if there are witnesses, you absolutely have to go ahead and bring witnesses. Amarle in. He said, yes, ki isi, I'm passing like isi, usvira lon kavase. And that is indeed how we paskin. Incredible. All right, so let's go back there. So the Gemara says, Askin Rabbi Chia bar Yosef b'sichra. So Rabbi Yosef went ahead and paskin in sichra. Hanu didaru ba'agra v'nitbar nishalim palga. Okay, so both say, so now this is an interesting case over here. So Rabbi Chia bar Abba paskin the following halacha. Look at Rashi for just a moment. It's actually if you go right across in Rashi to the right and a few lines up. So Rashi says over here, Hani didaru ba'agra. So Rashi says over here, Dar ba'agra, mot kafuf bemso, v'nosno al ksefo, v'nose shnei badin mishnei rosha, v'nosa ba masa kaved. So we're talking about over here that a person is carrying a load on a yoke. So they're putting a load on a yoke and putting that yoke on their back. Now here's what's interesting. So a person is carrying this yoke on their back and it breaks. It breaks, right? It breaks and or it falls off and the objects on top of the yoke break as well. Now, what's talacha? So Rabbi Yosef paskin nishalim palga. So the person carrying the yoke should have to pay half. Rashi says over here, nishalim palga. Paul shekibal alav laholi chavios mimakom lamakom v'nasam ba'osamot v'nishmar mishalim palga. So the guy who's carrying it, the worker who's carrying the yoke with the objects on top of it, and now the yoke falls off, the objects break, he should have to pay half the value, half the damages. Now, what's the pshat? My timer. Nafish lechad, bezutra letrei. I will say because the nature of this yoke and carrying it is an interesting in between. On one hand, it really is too heavy for one person, but it's not the kind of thing that's worth it to hire two people to carry. See here? It's like this in between scenario of on one hand too heavy for one person, but at the same time too light for two people, and therefore karav laones the karav lepshia. So therefore, on one hand, it's a little bit like a shtickle, extenuating circumstance, but also a little bit negligent. So I'll say, so how do you go ahead and so halachically, how do you deal with such a case like this? Half damages. Okay. So the Gemara says, on the other hand, bedigla mishalim kula. But I will say, so apparently there was something called a digla. So Rashi says over here, the digla is, actually we'll see it later on in Rashi, but it's like a double yoke, right? That would normally be carried by two. So this is now a double yoke that is carried by one person. So if one person tries to carry a double yoke, then halacha l'maisa, and the objects fall off and break, that's pshia, that's negligence, and they'll be chayiv full damages. I will say, the reason why this is very interesting is the following. What the Gemara is talking about over here is a very common case, right? A person is carrying something very heavy, or a person is carrying multiple objects. Now, technically speaking, what they should be doing is what? Making two trips, right? But instead they say, no, I got this. And then the objects fall and break. So we'll say the halacha says, that's negligence. And one will be chayiv for that. Whether you're a shomer chinam, whether you're a shomer sachar, because remember, everybody is chayiv for pshia. Very interesting. So also the Gemara goes weiter. Rabba bar Chanan, tavru le hano shakuloi chavisa dechamra. So Rabbi said, this is a great Gemara. This is a great Gemara. So Rabbi Bar Chanon. So we'll say he had hired people to go ahead and transport for him barrels of wine. What happened? They broke the barrels. So what did Rabbi do? Shakal liglimahu. So Rabbi went ahead and seized their cloaks. Seized their cloaks as a form of payment for the barrels. Now, again, Rabbi must have assumed, or the case must have been that it was a case of pshia. They were negligent. Or it could very well be, by the way, that it was a case of shomer sacher, and maybe he seized it. Fine, shakal l'glamayu. Asu amru l'Rav. So they brought this case before Rav. Amrulay. So Rav said to Rabbi Bar Chanan, hav luhu glimayu. Give them back their cloaks. So the Gemara said, Amrulay dina hachi. So Rabbi said, is that the halacha? That I'm obligated to give them back their cloaks? So the Gemara said, Amrulay in. He said, absolutely yes. Absolutely, you have to go ahead and give them back their cloaks. Never say, what's the pshat? Amrulay in. Leman telech b'derech tovim. So we'll say, this is incredible. Quoted from the pasuk in Mishlei, Leman telech b'derech tovim. You should walk in the ways of good people. And I will say, now watch what's happening over here, right? So again, the guys, right, the workers are transporting the barrels, they drop the barrels, they break the barrels. Rabbi seizes their cloaks. The reason Rabbi seizes their cloak is because he must have thought that Allah Chamaisa is the case of Pshia. So Rabbi says, give it back. Rabbi says, really, is that the halacha? So to which Rabbi responded from a pasuk from Mishlei, walk in the ways of good people. Now, both say that does not seem to be a halacha, right? That seems to be what's happening over here. That Rav was saying to Rabbi, don't do this. Give them back the cloaks. It was an accident, right? Right? L'maisa, again, even if technically speaking, you're entitled to go ahead and take repayment from them, sometimes it is better to forego your legal right in the pursuit of doing the right thing, right? Sometimes your legal right does not translate into the right thing. And I will say it'll make a little bit more sense in just a moment. Amrulay, aniye anon, v'tarchinon kuliyama. So also what happens. Rabbi gives back the cloak. The workers then say, so obviously Rabbi gave back the cloak. What isn't Rabbi going to do? He's not going to pay them their wage. Right? Now, as well say, there's two things over here. Number one, I'm not paying you for your work because you didn't do the job. Number two, I'm seizing your cloak to make up for my loss. So Rabbi says, give them back the cloak. Fine, so he gives back the cloak. Then the workers say, we're poor. And so we live off our daily wage. Now, I'm sorry. So Amrulay aniyana. So then the workers said to Rabba, right, we are poor. Utachinan kuliyama v'kafinan v'leslan midi. And again, we work for our daily bread, and we're hungry. We have nothing to eat. Amrulay zil hav agrayu. So Rava says to Rabba, pay them their wage. So they went to Amrulay dina hachi. So Rabba said, is this the halacha? They have to pay them the wage. They broke the barrels. Amrulay in va'orchos tzadikim tishmar. And literally again, watch over the ways of the righteous. Watch over the ways of the tzadikim. So we'll say, so obviously this is a really beautiful Gemara and an incredible way to end the parak. So we'll say, everything over here is talking about rights, right? Rights or legal entitlements or legal recourses. And we'll say, it's interesting. So halacha l'ma'isa, what comes out is the Rambam, by the way, adopts the position of Rabbi Meir, and indeed I will say there is this takanas chachamim that when the shaliach, right, or when the shomer, be it the shomer sacher or shomer chinor, is performing a normative activity with the item that he is watching, and the item breaks, the way he is able to exempt himself through a shvuah that he was not a posheya. And again, this was done as a form of legal protection for the shomer. The shomer is going to have to go ahead and move the item from here to there. So again, he doesn't get off scot-free, but if he swears that he was not posheya, that frees him from all liability. So we'll say it's interesting over here how the Gemara ends off. The Gemara ends off with this incredible story. And of course, the Musar Haskell of the story will say is that sometimes doing the right thing is not about enforcing your legal rights, but sometimes it's about understanding the nature of the situation. So here, they will say what Rav is telling Rabba is Rava read the room, so to speak, right? He read the scenario. And what was the scenario? These were poor workers who were working for their daily bread, who were not negligent. So apparently what Rabbi was saying to Rabbi is, listen, you can deal with the loss. You'll be just fine. Give them back their cloaks. Pay them their wage. And again, each time you find Rabbi asking, is this the halacha? And it's interesting because what Rabbi essentially responds is yeah, for you, this is the halacha. Because sometimes we'll say the halacha is not about mutter aser, but the halacha becomes doing what is truly the right thing in this scenario. So while it might be true, maybe you are entitled to hold back the wages, maybe you are entitled to hold back the cloaks. But again, for you in this scenario, that's not the right thing to do. I'll say this is very reminiscent of Mesilas Yesharim, right? Where ultimately, again, the Ramchal writes, what is the definition of a chassid? What is a chassid? Right? So a chassid is someone, right, who doesn't just live life within the legal framework of Torah. Right? The chassid is never just interested in what is right and what is wrong. What's tamei, what's tar, what's kasher, what's treif. The chassid has a higher interest. What is the Ratzon Hashem? What is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would want from me in this scenario? How is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would want me to act in this scenario? We'll say, and that's what we aspire to. And it's incredible. I'll say it's not an accident that the parak is ending off this, right? This whole parak, or so much of Bava Metzia, is about, what are you liable to? What's the legal decision, right? What's enforceable? What's not enforceable? And that's all incredible and all important. But I will say, that's not how we aim to live our lives, just by what's mutter, what's asar. How I want to live my life is, what is the Ratzon Hashem? Because sometimes something could be mutter, but it's not the right thing for me to do here. Or sometimes something could be legal, or something could be enforceable, but the Ratzon Hashem says, being a chassid says, aim higher, do more. Don't live your life just based on right or wrong, but figure out what is the higher calling, what is the higher level of trying to figure out the Ratzon Hashem. Such a beautiful way to end the parak. We'll say, Shkaya Hadron Allah, Hasoch Haso'omnin. Incredible. Let's go weiter. We'll say, great cases here. Hasoch Haso'omnin. We'll say, again, new parak, even if you were totally lost, the last parak or the last 5.5 years, whatever it is, right? We'll say, zone in, you got this, get your notebook, take notes, don't wander, don't drift off, don't check your email, right? We got this. There's literally, again, 18 minutes left this year. Unless all of us can resist it. Let's go. Hasochas hapolim. So we'll say, so again, I rent workers, I hire workers. Va'amar lahem lahashkim ulahariv. Now watch this. Now I will say, the way I contract with my workers is, I say, Chavra, we're starting work early in the morning and going until late at night. Okay, so what's the halacha? Makom shenagu shel lahashkim shel laharav and rashai lekofan. So if the minhag makom, right? If the normal course of employment agreement is that workers don't do that. In other words, we'll say, so what it's talking about over here is, I'm hiring workers not in conformance with local custom. So I'm hiring workers, say, Chavra, we are starting very early and we're going very late at night. So where that is not the custom, and a rashei lekofan, I can't force them to work any more than the normal custom. We'll say if it's customary to feed your workers, then you're obligated to feed your workers. Now we'll say means if it's not just customary to give them bread, but it's customary to give them dips, right? Relish and different things. Again, you feed your workers in accordance with minhag Medina. So we'll say what the Gemara is highlighting over here, the Mishnah is highlighting over here, Hakol minhag Medina. The duration of the workday, what you give your workers over the course of that workday, everything is determined by minhag Medina. Okay? Ma'aser b'Yochanan ben Metzia, also we actually saw this Gemara before. There was a beautiful story of Yochanan ben Metzia. Shomer Lebeno said to his son, say, Sechel Anapolim, go and hire workers for us. So halach upasak la mizonos. So we'll say what happens. The son hired workers, and he made the statement. He made the statement that I'm going to feed you. So we'll say so again. So just it's important to understand over here, right? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Metzia says to his son, hire workers. The son goes out to hire workers, and he says, also I'll feed you during the day. So Gemara says, aviv when he came to his father said to him, Beni, afilu em ata osalan kesuda shloma b'shaito lo yatsi yedei chavascha imayim shehin b'nei Avram Yitzchak v'Yakov. Such a beautiful Gemara. So says now, watch this. Rabbi Yochanan ben Metzia says, oh no, what did you do? You agreed to feed them, but I will say, but what happened? What didn't he do? He didn't define the parameters of mezonos. So because you didn't define the parameters of mezonos, you're going to be obligated to give them the most lavish meals. After all, who did you hire? You hired royalty. You hired Jews. Jews are royalty, I will say. And therefore, again, because you hired royalty, mamish, you're going to be on the hook for a Suda Shlomo Melech, meal of Solomonic proportions, right? For each and every meal. So rather, what should you do? Ella, actually, aschila b'malach. I'd say v'amar lahem amanas she'im lachem alai ella pas v'kitnis bilvad. So as long as they haven't started the work yet, you could redefine the parameters of the employment agreement and tell them, yes, I'm going to hire you for mezonos. I will say, what's mezonos? What's mezonos? Bread and lentils. And as long as you define that and they accept that, then that's the scope of your responsibility. Rabbi Shmuel says, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that because, again, everything is minhag hamedina, right? So again, I will say, so what comes out from the Mishnah? What's the bottom line of the Mishnah? When you hire workers, right, the contract or the employment agreement is pretty much based on what we'll call it local norms and customs. That includes the duration of the workday. That includes if you're chayiv to feed them, and even if you're chayiv to feed them, what you have to feed them. All is minhag hamedina. Incredible. So the Gemara says pshita. So we'll say, so now let's go back. First thing in the Mishnah was, if I hire workers, and then I say, chevra, no, we're starting very early and going late. So what's the halacha? Ultimately, again, you can't make them work any more than is the common minhag hamedina. So we'll say, Gemara says pshita. That's obvious. Now we'll say, what's the chap over here? I'm paying them more. Let's say the going work is $250 a day, and I'm paying them $300 a day. So the reason I'm paying you $300 a day is why? Because you're starting work earlier and going later. To which the Gemara says they could say, "Mao detema amar luhu had detafay luhu agraichu adaita dekadmisu umachshicho bahadi." So you might have thought like this: since I'm paying them extra, it's understood that I expect them to start earlier and go later. Kamash malan da amrulei hai detafas lana daita da avdina lecha avidita shapirta. To which they can respond, no. That's not what the extra money is. What's the extra money? We're going to do a good job. So we spoke about this in last parak as well, which is really quite fascinating. That Chazal accept this idea that people provide different levels of service. Right? And the Metzia will say again, and sometimes people, literally again, as they say, you get what you pay for. So I figured I'm paying them extra money. So the assumption is we're starting earlier, going later. So I will say, so again, they say, no. You're paying us extra money. We're going to give you good work. We're going to do a good job. Right? So before we were going to give you $250 worth of labor. Now we're giving you $300. Same time frame, so you can't force the workers to begin. I will say, and we spoke about this last parak, I'll say, what a tremendous yesod. Human nature is human nature. That most people, the way they operate in life, is what you pay me for, is exactly what I'm going to do, and no more. And I will say, if you think about it in life, this is the great determinant of success. What is the difference between successful people and just people who live their lives steeped in mediocrity? It's very simple. Mediocre people will do exactly what is obligated to them and not one stitch more of work. I will get into work when I have to get into work. I will leave work when I am able to leave work. I will do what is assigned to what I need to do in order to get by, and not one bit more. And by the way, probably a good 99% of humanity is like this. And it's fine. We'll do exactly. So we'll say, what creates excellence? What creates excellence is no matter what I'm getting paid, I'm giving it 100%. No matter what I'm going to do, I'm going to take pride in my work, and I'm going to deliver or try to create an excellent product. And maybe I'll get in a little earlier than everyone else, and I'll stay in a little bit later than everyone else, and I'll push myself just a little bit more. And maybe no one will even recognize it or even see it, but I'll see it. Because I take pride in what it is that I do, and I want to create excellence. Let's say it's such a tremendous yesod, and you see this in the world. And by the way, you could be fine with mediocrity, right? You could do well, you could even make a nice living, you could do it, add on to mediocrity. And you can get by because most of the world does. But I will say, but why settle for mediocrity when you can ultimately live a life of excellence? Whether it's in your professional life, whether it's in your ruchnius life, don't just live up to expectations. but try your best to transcend them. The Gemara says, Amar Shlakish, Amud Beis. Let's say great Gemara. Great Gemara over here. Poel b'chnisasa mishalo u'b'yitzias mishal balabayis. Shabbos say this is fascinating. Now, the assumption over here is like this. Let's assume for a moment that the regular work day, right, goes from sunrise to sunset, right, especially in an agricultural setting. Sunrise to sunset. Shabbos says, so now remember, I'm a worker. Now in my day, right, there's my commute. There's my commute, right? I have to get to work and I have to get home from work. Shabbos says, so whose time does the commute take place on? So the Gemara says like this, is fascinating. When going home, you go home ultimately again on your own time. So in other words, we'll say, I work until sunset and then I go home. It's not the pshat that I get to be home by sunset. In other words, you work until sunset. I'm just using sunrise sunset because that's the agricultural model. You work until sunset and then you go home on your own time. But yet, interestingly enough, b'yitziaso, when you come to work in the morning, that's on the balabayis time. So in other words, I don't have to leave my home before sunrise in order to be at the field by sunrise. Rather, again, halacha l'maisa, I can leave my house at sunrise, and then I get to work, because again, the work they start, I get to work, hopefully whenever I get to work. So it's interesting, right? So if you reverse it a little bit, b'yitziaso mishal balabayis, when you leave for work, so to speak, on the balabayis this time. In other words, sunrise, I'm at work, my commute is part of work, but bechnisaso, coming back into my house, ultimately, again, it's on my time. Also, I found this line very striking as well, just on a hashkafic level. Also, if you look at it the opposite way, b'yitziaso mishal balabayis. B'yitziaso is, when your neshama leaves shamayim, and you come down into this world, right? You leave shamayim, come down into this world, that's mishal balabayis. That's an HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? I didn't ask to be born. This is why in Birchos HaShachar in the morning, right? We don't make a positive bracha, right? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam sha'asani ish. We don't make such a bracha like that, right? We make a lot of negative bracha. Thank you for not making me this. Thank you for not making me this. Thank you for not making me this. Right? And even a woman says the bracha of sha'asani kirtzono, right? Not sha'asani isha, right? So what's the pshat? Because we paskin, like we paskin, noach lo la'adam shelo nivra. It would have been better not to have been created. Life is filled with incredible adversity, difficulty, right? So the truth is, all things being equal, it would have been better ultimately, again, to remain as a neshama in shamayim next to the kisei hakavod. That would have been better. So b'yitziasu mishal balabayis. I'm here, not because I asked to be here. I'm asked because the balabayis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, put me here. That's a fact. However, I will say, bichnisaso mishalo. But when I go back home, right? Bichnisas, when I go back after 120 to Shamayim, mishalo. What I have made out of my life, that's on me. I'm here because the Balabayas put me here. But bichnisaso, after 120, I will say, what I did or I did not make out of my life, mishalo, that is on me. And I will say we have a litany of excuses as to why we have not become the people we need to become. We have a litany of excuses why we haven't accomplished the things we want to accomplish. We have a whole laundry list of reasons and people who are responsible for my failure to launch. At the end of the day, the buck of my life stops with me. And after 120, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks me, I'm not worried about my Avros, we speak about this. After 120, what scares me the most is not being confronted by my Averos. Right? Because what's the good news? The good news is we're in good company when it comes to Averos. Right? We all commit Averos. The scariest thing after 120 is HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows you the life you could have led, the person you could have been, the things you could have accomplished. And you see all of the incredible ways in which you could have made a difference, and I didn't. That's pain. That's difficult. So at the end of the day, we'll say after 120, Be'poel bichnisasu mishalom. When each of us goes back after 120, we come back, what I did or what I didn't accomplish, that's on me. So, I'm here because of the balabayis, I left shine because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but we have to get to work. Don't we feel this? We have to feel a sense of urgency in life. to accomplish, to do, to grow. There is no time. There's no time. I don't know if it's just a function of getting older, but I feel, I don't know if, especially of recently, a growing and impending level of inner anxiety. That there is so much to do and there is so little time. There is so much to accomplish, and yet there's so much time that I have not maximized. So much I will say, we have to get to work. Whatever you need to accomplish, no more excuses. No more excuses. We make so many excuses, and to be honest, we have to get back to the Gemara. We make so many excuses. No, because it's important. We give ourselves a pass on so many things. Right? We give ourselves a pass on so many things. And if you take a step back in just a moment, think about the things in life you give yourself a pass on. And then ask yourself, why? Why am I giving myself a pass on that? Why have I created such a low bar of expectation for myself? Poel bechnisaso mishalo. At the end of the day, after 120, the quality of the life I lived, what I accomplished, what I didn't accomplish, that's on me. I will say, let's become good po'alim. Let's become good workers, and let's exceed expectations. Shneimar. Tizrach Hashem she'asevun ve'alma osan yibatzun. Yetzi adul lepalo olavadaso ade arav. So we'll say the idea over here is really focusing on that last pasuk. Olavadaso ade arav. Velechsi hechinegi. So I don't understand. We'll say, so we're trying to figure out over here. We're trying to right. So let's go full circle. We're going over. We're speaking about this idea that workers only work for a certain amount of time, right? So even if halacha l'maisa, I go ahead and I hire workers for extra money. So halacha l'maisa, they could say, no, we go by minhag hamakom. The extra money you gave us, ultimately, again, was for better quality of work. The Gemara says, but if you hire workers, why don't you just see what the minhag hamakom is? Bi'ir chadasha. It's a brand new city. Therefore, no minhag hamakom. So why don't you see where these workers came from? And let them be bound by whatever the minhag hamakom was of the place they came from. The Gemara says, binikutai. It's about immigrants, right? People, in ours, it's a chalent, where the place where I am is a melting pot. So even people come from different places, different minhagim. Or we'll say the other possibility is, I hire the workers and I say, you should be like a poel da'araisa. I was going to be like a poel da'araisa. So poel da'araisa, again, goes to work. The commute is on the balabayas' time, and ultimately, again, going home is on his time. Darish Rabbi Zera v'amrei tani Rabbi Yosef. Ma'idich what's the meaning of the pasuk? Tashes choshech vihi laila. Bo sirmos chayso yar. So we'll say, what does it mean? What is this phrase? What does this pasuk mean? Tashes choshech vihi laila. Literally, again, he creates night, creates darkness, and it'll be night. Zeh olam hazeh. This refers to this world. Shedoma lalayla. I will say, so often this world could feel like night. This world could feel like night. The heaviness, the darkness, the pain, the suffering could feel like night. So the Gemara says, Bo tirmos kol chayso yar. So we'll say all of literally the beasts of the forest live in it. Who are the beasts of the forest? Elu rishoim. This refers to the wicked. Shedoma lechaya shebiyar. That feel like, that are like, they lurk like the beasts in the forest. So we'll say, what happens with the wicked in this world? So the wicked, I will say, sometimes aren't necessarily overtly wicked. They lurk. And when they find that opportunity to do something wicked, then they pounce. Like the forests, like the beasts of the forest. You may not see them, but then when the opportunity comes, they pounce. That's the Rishon. That's the Rishon. We'll say, we're living this, right? We're living this. We see this happening in our world. Tizrach Hashem ya'asefun ve'alma osam yirbatzun. So we'll say, what does this mean? Tizrach Hashem, the sun will come out. Let's tzadikim. Ultimately, again, for the righteous. Ya'asefun, they'll be collected. Rishoim ligehenom. Ultimately, that refers to the Rishoim ultimately going to Gehenna. Literally, again, they crouch in their room, in their area. In Olam Haba, in the world to come, every tzaddik has a portion in accordance with his standing. Adam lefalo. So we'll say, man goes out to do his work. Yatsu tzaddikim lekabel scharan. In the afterlife, tzaddikim will come to collect their reward. Ulaavadasa ade arev. What does this mean? When do you collect your work? When do you collect your wages? When you are the person who worked until nightfall. Which means if I'm a person who worked until the end of life, if I'm a person who constantly put in the effort all the way until the evening is a reference to death. If I'm a person who worked my entire time in this life, then ultimately, again, I will be the kind of person who will collect the wages for his effort. We'll stop over here. We're good. We're fine. Don't worry. Don't look at other days. Whatever you do, don't turn the page. Don't turn the page for tomorrow's daf. Right? We are fine. I'll say we're going to start at 5:45 tomorrow. Hashem. But again, we'll say. I just want to point out. I got it to next couple of days. Next couple of days, we have some incredibly amazing Gemara. We'll say shkoyach.